Hi, Sarah here. Welcome back. I got 10 cards today related to the ADHD experience and probably anxiety as well. How do I know, you might ask? Well, this pal has been diagnosed with ADHD in September. After being in therapy for 5-6 months, I realized that not only do I have anxiety, but I also have ADHD. Wow! Let me tell you, I did not think that I was going to get diagnosed with anything when I was like a teenager or a young adult. I kind of thought that self-exploration was like done for the most part when you're like a teenager or a young adult. So how come me at 29, I'm surprised that there's more exploration to be done? Well, as it turns out, when people associate ADHD with a lot of negative traits and traits that are deemed inconvenient or burdensome to other people, of course, it's hard to admit out loud that you might struggle with some of these things. Like if someone were to ask me, like, do you have trouble following up with stuff? I would be like, no. First of all, I make myself follow up, even if it causes me intense stress. Isn't that normal for everybody? Second of all, why would I ever admit out loud that I have traits that are inconvenient to other people? I've been unlearning a lot of what it means to be inconvenient and what it just means to be myself versus masking in therapy. And that is what brought me eventually to getting diagnosed with ADHD. And one day, as I was looking at my cards, I basically wrote down a whole list of many cards that I associated with the ADHD experience. I wrote down like almost 30 cards, but for brevity's sake, I'll just share 10 of those cards in this video today. 10 tarot cards related to my experience of ADHD. Now, prefacing, of course, I don't speak for all people with ADHD. ADHD does show up differently for everyone. You can have these traits without having them maybe severe enough that it impairs your life and or severe enough that you qualify for a diagnosis of ADHD. Also, you can have struggles with these without being or having ADHD. It can still be a valid part of the human experience. Label or not, these are facets of my experience. It's just that now I have a word for how all of these traits of myself exist. They exist under this umbrella of traits called ADHD. Also, I don't intend for this video to be diagnosing anybody, so please don't use this video to be like,
oh, you drew the 10 of Wands in a reading. That means you have ADHD.
That is completely not my intention for this video. You can tell I'm really in the flow today because I feel so sparkly and I feel so in the flow. Anyway, please just enjoy this video for what it is. If you have ADHD or other types of neurodivergence or other types of weirdness in the brain, I hope you can appreciate or learn something from this, right? Okay, so the first 10 cards I wrote down in this list of tarot cards that I relate to having ADHD, and in my case, anxiety as well. So the first 2 cards I want to mention is the 7 of Cups and the 7 of Pentacles. So the 7 of Cups is a card about having so many ideas. Sometimes this card can be associated with daydreaming because your head is metaphorically in the clouds. It's got all these ideas of, where's this train of thought going? Oh, what do I want to eat for dinner? What do I want to have for lunch tomorrow? Wait, what did I have for lunch yesterday? Should I be eating more of the same thing or should I be eating something different? Oh my God, I hope I don't forget to make that appointment later. Oh wait, did I forget an appointment earlier on today that I was supposed to get to? Did I text my friend back? Should I be eating more snacks because I'm hungry right now? There are so many thoughts coming into the brain at one time, and sometimes it can be really overwhelming to try to follow every single train of thought and try to decipher and sift through these thoughts to figure out which one is important enough to act on right now versus which ones need to just get through the train station and leave the train station, and we'll circle back to that thought another time. So that is one ADHD experience here, and I relate it to the 7 of Pentacles as well because I associate 7 of Pentacles with focus. Also, with these suits in mind, I associate the Cup suit with ideas. I know that the Wand suit can represent ideas and passions. Cups can also represent ideas and fancies in a way, dreams really. And I associate the Pentacles with work, with action. Not action like in a Wands or a fiery way, but action in more dedicated, slow action. This tells me the story of someone who just has so many ideas, like depicted in the 7 of Cups, but they don't know how to prioritize or focus on which ideas. Again, like I mentioned, we have so many thoughts coming through our train station at any time, or on sometimes, maybe on a good day, there's not as many thoughts, but a lot of the time, there's just so many thoughts coming through, so many things that we want to keep track of. Our attention is just flitting everywhere, and it takes extra effort to try to prioritize or focus on specific things. The next card I wrote down, is the Ten of Wands. When I first was learning tarot, I immediately identified with the Ten of Wands. This is like years ago, way before I ever suspected I had ADHD or any sort of neurodivergence. The Ten of Wands is a card about usually working inefficiently. You have all of these wands, you have all these passions and ideas, projects going on, but the way that you're carrying them or the way that you're managing them usually is not ideal. Usually the implication is that you have taken on so much more than you can handle by yourself, and or all the things that you're handling, you're not handling them very well, very efficiently. Kind of like how this panda, they got their 10 wands and they're kind of just overwhelmed. They're laying on this tree trunk, this tree branch. They're just kind of tired. How many times have I wanted to start new projects? How many times have I actually started new projects? For example, new crochet projects and knit projects and Google Docs and video ideas I've written down, events I want to plan with my friends, only to find out that after things are getting in motion, oh my God, it's so overwhelming actually keeping up with them and trying to follow each of them through to completion. A lot of people struggle with following up with things, and there's a lot of shame that we feel in, not completing everything to perfection or even to completion, much less perfection. So this Ten of Wands experience, it definitely speaks to working inefficiently. You're spending so much energy on keeping all your wands together because we want to keep all of our things going on. And we don't want to let any of them go because all of these are important and all of these are fun. Sometimes we just don't know any better ways to operate. So yeah, the experience of feeling overwhelmed by all the things that we have committed to or that we tried to commit to, that feels like a Ten of Wands experience, feels like an ADHD experience. Another card I've got is the Emperor. I very, very much relate to this card as masking, basically. Like I mentioned, it's not easy to admit out loud or desirable to admit out loud that you might struggle with things, especially since some people might think of people with ADHD as less reliable. So of course, we would want to mask any notions of us being annoying or being unreliable. And the mask that we put on, the facade that we put on, is the air of seeming all put together. When I was a child, a teenager, even in college, no one ever would have suspected I had ADHD, that I had any distractible, disorganized tendencies, because on the surface, I appear very put together. I appear very detail oriented. I appear like I'm able to meet deadlines. I'm able to follow through on projects. I totally work well in group projects where I have to depend on other people. That's because it's all a mask. There is so much effort put into appearing put together. And actually, having to keep up this appearance of being put together can actually cause a lot of anxiety. It can cause us to want to overcompensate. Maybe we start pointing out too much, like how organized we are, or how being late wasn't my fault. It was traffic, or someone else was causing me to be late because I didn't want to admit out loud that it was my own tendency to not be able to manage my time properly. There's a lot of anxiety and stress that comes with masking and trying to put together this facade, this image of seeming put together all the time. Yeah, the note that I wrote down here is we appear reliable and put together on the outside, but inside we're trying to overcompensate for how scattered we feel inside and how hard it is to mask our natural tendency to be disorganized. The next card I've got is the Ten of Pentacles, but actually in reverse. So the Ten of Pentacles is a card about legacy, longevity. Similar to the Ten of Wands, it could also relate to completed projects, so much follow through that it helps you and your future generations prosper. I said the Ten of Pentacles in reverse because this can mean material items. And oh boy, of course, do we struggle sometimes with material items, material collections. If the Wands can relate to passions and ideas, the Pentacles can relate to, again, material items like our actual collections, or it can also mean the projects, the things that we have put effort into, put our energy and even invested time and resources into. So the Ten of Pentacles reverse can signify anxiety about starting but not finishing every single project that we've started. So with these pentacles or coins or discs relating to projects or items, when we buy items, usually there's hopes and dreams attached to those items. With tarot decks, for example, we buy decks because we hope that in the future we're going to be able to work with them and it's going to change your life in a whole new way. Usually the reality sinks in that, oh my God, I have bought too many things in a short amount of time. I don't actually have the energy or the follow through to work with all of these. Another struggle that people with ADHD can have is not being able to prioritize what to keep and what to throw away. For example, there's like so much food in the pantry and or in the freezer that I don't want to throw away. Just like coconut milk from like ages ago, because I was going to make mango sticky rice with, coconut milk a while back, months ago, and I still have not done it. And I could throw the milk away, or I could keep it, because what if in the next couple weeks I do want to make mango sticky rice with coconut milk? That can be how it is when you have ADHD and your brain is trying to latch on to every single potential project. I think the concept of potential really shows through in the Ten of Pentacles, especially reversed, because again, upright Ten of Pentacles, we're thinking about the longevity of things. Like, oh, what if, this thing is so important. After I will get it done, it will change my life and the world forever. It'll be so good. It'll be so grand. But it turns out in reverse, and it turns out we don't have the follow through for every single project to absolute completion. And honestly, sometimes if we do finish a project, it doesn't really change our life for the better that much either. So there's a lot of hopes and dreams that I attach to the Ten of Pentacles, the idea of longevity and potential. The next card I've got is the Three of Wands. Like I mentioned with the Ten of Pentacles related to longevity, I relate the Three of Wands to lack of patience for long-term gratification or waiting. One thing that comes to mind is reading about this marshmallow experiment that some researchers conducted on kids. They put like a marshmallow in front of a kid, and say, you can have this marshmallow now, or if you wait like 5 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. And they do a study to see like which kids or how many kids can practice like patience for the delayed gratification. I associate this Three of Wands with the idea of instant gratification versus delayed gratification. A practical example for adults is, would you want to take a 3-day trip, an average like 3-day trip like next month, or would you want to try to save up for the end of the year and save all your spoons and your energy and do like a 1 or 2 week long grand trip? I would just rather do the 3-day trip, because I do not have the patience nor the energy to plan for and look forward to a giant trip at the end of the year. I would much rather have like a 3-day trip. Also, on a side note, what factors into that like marshmallow experiment and like these kinds of practical examples is like your financial status too, and other things going on in your life. Like if you live a very, very busy life, of course it makes sense that you would want to just do one trip at the end of the year. For the marshmallow study, for example, like if you come from a poorer household, like of course you might have different standards for what you can tolerate. Like of course having food now is better than waiting to have possible food or not food later. Anyway, so yeah, delayed gratification. This is why it can be easy to skip almost a 3 of Wands stage and go right to 9 or 10 of Wands stage. Maybe overnight or over a week or a short span of time, you might end up starting a lot of projects because you're impatient for the results of these projects to come back, or you're anxious or impatient for the next steps of the project to come through. So you end up starting more projects and more and more and more. And before you know it, you're in the 10 of Wands stage where you're like, what have I done? I have started too many things that I might not be able to finish. Another couple of cards I'll mention is the Three of Pentacles and the Six of Pentacles. I've mentioned in my favorite cards of the Way of the Panda video that these are some of my favorite cards, especially because the Six of Pentacles in other decks usually depicts only 2 figures, maybe sharing resources, but the Six of Pentacles in this deck depicts a community of pandas. It is so important and so valuable that we get tangible help from other people. Giving and receiving tangible support from other people and building tangible support and foundations for ourselves means not just giving ourselves affirmations for when we have good days or bad days, and not just, tying our worth to how productive we are, but more of, like I said, tangible support. So for example, accountability buddies, that can totally be a Three of Pentacles thing. Going on a walk can be easier when I have a friend to call as I'm getting out of the house, as opposed to when I don't have a friend to keep me accountable. Doing tarot deck studies can be easier with other people because we're all on the same track. It's harder to drop the ball when you have other people relying on you. And here, sharing resources with other people. For people that live in households, people can share the load of doing laundry, getting groceries, planning out the grocery list, cooking for the house, cleaning the house. Those are all examples of tangible support that we can offer each other. I saw a video on Instagram where someone invited their friend to come over and they just meal prepped together in her house. And I thought that was so sweet. It keeps them both accountable. They get to share the kitchen and chat as they both do their meal prep. That's such a wonderful, 3 or 6 of Pentacles moment. You're sharing the space together, sharing your time and energy. and you're keeping each other accountable for your goals and your projects. So yeah, supporting one another tangibly is important, not just for neurodivergent people or disabled people, but really for all of us in the community, because we all struggle with different things. Yeah, this is my utopia, man. I wish we could all live closer together and we could all support each other more like in this way. Next card, second last card for this video, is the Temperance card. A few weeks ago, I learned of this concept called self-regulation. The YouTube channel, The Thought Spot, is an amazing resource, amazing channel for people who are neurodivergent. The creator, the person behind The Thought Spot, is named Irene. She's an autistic and ADHD woman. She has this one video that really stood out to me a few weeks ago. It was called Simple Ways I Self-Regulate Every Day. With the way that our brains work, it can be very easy to get emotionally dysregulated when we have unexpected changes, when we have too much going on, or maybe not enough going on. We need to have self-regulation exercises and activities to help basically regulate our heart and our body and bring us back to like a neutral, like almost peaceful, like baseline. Some examples of self-regulation activities, especially being all free, costing no money, is taking walks every day, making time to do mindful breathing and deep breathing throughout your day, making time to do stretches, because a lot of the time, especially if you're work from home like me, you just sit kind of hunched over, like with your shoulders slouched all the time. So making time to actually stretch all the parts of ourselves that don't get stretching throughout the day. That's also self-regulating. Without self-regulating every day, it can be easy to almost live life on that roller coaster. Like, dude, I just live for like the highs and the lows of like when I feel good about being productive and when I feel super crappy about being not productive. So temperance reminds me that we need those self-regulation exercises every day, those slow moments baked in, so we can feel that sort of serenity, that sort of peacefulness. Without these self-regulation exercises, it feels like every day is just really stressful. And it feels like any type of stress is really overwhelming to me because I'm already on a like 9 or 10 of 1 state of mind. And it feels like if anything else happens, I'm going to be so stressed. I'm just going to make freaking lose it. So that's why the self-regulation exercises, they're very important, not just for when I am stressed and need to recover or respond to the stress, but even before I get to that point. I'll link the video that I learned from the Thought Spot in the description. For me, who does deal with a lot of stress, these types of self-regulation exercises are really important. And the last one I'll mention for this video is the Tower. I associate the Tower with suddenly realizing that you're not neurotypical, and as much as you try to mask, you are not actually your mask. The Tower concept can also be associated with any type of coming out, not just to other people, but to yourself even. When you first realize maybe you're not straight, maybe you're not cis, maybe you're not neurotypical. That can be a really, really huge realization. For me, it was a difficult realization because, like I mentioned at the beginning, I had previously associated a lot of traits of ADHD with, again, not being reliable or not being like convenient. That was a lot of internalized ableism and internalized like capitalism that I unlearned and am still unlearning and acknowledging in my life. And what I mean by internalized ableism and internalized capitalism, for people who might not understand what that means, is that just because someone is distractible does not mean that they're less of a person. Just because someone forgets their homework or doesn't turn in their like essays on time, it doesn't mean they're less of a person. Maybe they just need different accommodations for them to deliver the material or for them to understand and learn the material. And what I mean by internalized capitalism is that I am just as worthy of, human dignity and respect on days that I cannot focus as I am on days that I can focus and I can produce a lot for my company to make money off of me. What determines worth? Who determines what's worthy? Why are people who are super productive determined more worthy of keeping alive than people who are not productive and not making as much money? And I want to highlight that in this Tower card, the panda has actually chosen to knock down the tower themselves. And we see new bamboo shoots growing already in its place. I did not have to strike down that tower, that idea of me being neurotypical. I could have avoided diagnosis, whether from an external source or from myself. I didn't have to look at these things. But I also felt like my tower, my image of myself as a normal person, a neurotypical person, it just was not fitting in with the self that I was actually noticing. By me choosing to open that door and explore more of what it means to be neurodivergent, and what it means to think of myself as different from who I knew before, that is basically me like choosing to strike down the tower, striking down this whole house of cards that I've built that no longer serves me. It doesn't serve me anymore to think of myself as neurotypical because it ignores a lot of the actual struggles and the actual tendencies that I have inside. In time, it has definitely become so liberating because I no longer hold myself to the old expectations that I used to have. There's a lot of devil stuff in here that I will save for a future video. Anyway, the Tower, realizing that you're not neurotypical or that what you believed or lived before was normal or helpful to you, but how liberating it can be once we have struck down the tower and chosen to look for other ways of living and other ways of loving ourselves and accommodating our actual needs as they are. So these are 10 cards that I associate with having ADHD. Before I close out, I'm a bit worried that I may have said too many negative things about people with ADHD and or neurodivergences. So I want to affirm you, people with neurodivergences, any sort of disability, whether mental or physical or otherwise, your normal is just as valid as anybody else's normal. The way that you learn to cope with things, it's completely valid. And it makes sense for you considering the ways that you grew up and the ways that your brain works naturally. Even if you have traits that you worry are inconvenient or burdensome to other people, you know what? That's a part of the human experience. It's completely impossible to never inconvenience or never burden anybody else. I guess I apologize if those words feel kind of heavy to you. For me, I was struggling with considering myself inconvenient or burdensome for a long time, and those are still some of my deepest fears. So, I just want to speak to my experience. So for you out there, just know that the people who are worth it, they will make the effort to accommodate you. My partner accommodates for me. My friends, who I love very much, they accommodate for me and they validate me and they help keep me accountable and also give me grace when they know I need it. And I give myself those things as well when I know that I need it. So I hope that you do find people and environments who can show you that you are worth accommodating for. Your needs are not a burden. The ways that your brain works, they're not a burden. They are an amazing testament to the variety that we have as humans, to the spectrum of colors that we all come in. I want to give a shout out to people on TarotTube who have spoken about their neurodivergences. Hearing other people mention their neurodivergences, whether in passing or making dedicated videos about them, that has been so valuable to me in understanding that people's brains work differently. It's helped me check myself on a lot of ableist beliefs that I had internalized, and it's helped me explore for myself, do I relate to or struggle with some of these things as well? And it's okay if you do, because it's just all a part of the human experience. I'm curious if any of the 10 cards that I mentioned relate to your experience, or if other tarot cards relate to your experience. Stay tuned for a part 2 coming up whenever it comes up. All right, well, that is all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.